James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, published in 1916. Stands as a monumental achievement within the literary landscape of modernism, primarily recognized as a definitive Künstlerroman. A narrative dedicated to the formative artistic growth of its central figure, Stephen Dedalus. This deeply personal coming-of-age story, a sophisticated iteration of the Bildungsroman tradition, meticulously charts Stephen's psychological and spiritual evolution from the nebulous perceptions of childhood through the complex crucible of adolescence into young adulthood. It is a profound exploration of a young man's arduous journey as he navigates the labyrinthine pathways of his nascent identity, wrestling with the formidable influences of his nationality, the pervasive doctrines of his religion, the intricate dynamics of his family, and the increasingly defined contours of his emerging self. The novel is widely understood as a thinly veiled autobiographical account, with Stephen Dedalus functioning as Joyce's own artistic proxy. A fictional embodiment of the author's formative experiences and evolving consciousness. The very choice of Stephen's surname, a direct evocation of Dedalus, the master artificer of Greek myth renowned for his ingenuity and escape, serves as a potent prefiguration of his ultimate destiny as a creator, an artist destined to fashion his own reality. Stephen, echoing the first Christian martyr, subtly foreshadows a path of sacrifice, a willingness to bear witness to a new artistic truth, even at the cost of societal acceptance and personal comfort. The journey of Stephen Dedalus, the intellectual and artistic soul at the heart of the novel, is a profound exploration of self-discovery, intricately woven from the threads of his Irish Catholic upbringing and a burgeoning artistic consciousness. From his earliest years, Stephen is depicted as a sensitive child, keenly observing the world around him, though often through a lens of bewilderment and nascent intellectual curiosity. The narrative begins by immersing us in his childhood, not with a straightforward chronological account, but with an impressionistic rendering of his perceptions, a foreshadowing of the more complex narrative techniques to come. His early experiences, the sounds, the sights, the emotional undercurrents of family life, and the imposing rituals of his Catholic faith, all contribute to the formation of his unique sensibility. These initial impressions are not mere backdrop, they are the very substance of his developing mind, a mind that begins to question, to abstract, and to seek meaning beyond the immediate and the conventional. The nascent stages of his psychological and intellectual development are marked by a profound engagement with his internal world, a turning inward that becomes a hallmark of his character and a crucial element in his eventual artistic aspirations. This introspective tendency, fueled by a vexed psyche and soul, drives him to grapple with the very nature of reality as it shifts and reforms around him. A process that forces him to rely increasingly on his own internal compass for guidance and understanding. The very language of the novel shifts, a deliberate stylistic choice by Joyce, to reflect Stephen's mental growth, moving from simple, evocative descriptions of sensory experiences to more complex internal dialogues and abstract contemplations. Stephen's early years are indelibly marked by the pervasive influence of Irish Catholicism, a force that simultaneously offers solace and imposes a rigid moral framework, creating a fertile ground for internal conflict. The family hearth, a nexus of warmth and tradition, is also a site of simmering tensions and unspoken anxieties, particularly in the aftermath of political turmoil and the lingering shadow of Parnell's downfall. Events that ripple through the domestic sphere and contribute to a pervasive sense of disillusionment. Stephen, as a highly sensitive and introspective child, absorbs these undercurrents, his innocent perceptions often tinged with an adult awareness of discord and betrayal. His schooling, first at Clongowes College, a Jesuit institution, becomes a microcosm of the societal pressures and intellectual challenges he will face throughout his life. Here, the rigid discipline of the school, the complex social hierarchies among the boys, and the intellectual tutelage of the priests all contribute to Stephen's burgeoning awareness of his own distinctiveness. He experiences the sting of social ostracism, the humiliation of physical punishment, and the burgeoning understanding that his intellectual curiosities and artistic inclinations set him apart from his peers. This period of early education is not merely about acquiring knowledge but about the profound shaping of Stephen's character, fostering a sense of alienation that will become a recurring motif in his journey. The harsh realities of boarding school life, the bullying he endures, and the intellectual stimulation he receives from certain masters all serve to sculpt his emerging personality, instilling in him a keen sense of observation and a nascent desire to articulate his unique perspective on the world. The intellectual and spiritual awakening of Stephen Dedalus intensifies as he moves from adolescence into early adulthood. A period characterized by a growing disillusionment with the tenets of his faith and a profound questioning of the moral and social strictures imposed by his Irish Catholic upbringing. The rigid doctrines of the Church, once a source of comfort and order, begin to feel increasingly like a suffocating yoke, stifling his burgeoning artistic aspirations and his innate desire for freedom. This internal conflict is exacerbated by the societal expectations that surround him, which seem to prioritize conformity and adherence to tradition over individual expression and intellectual exploration. Stephen finds himself increasingly at odds with the world, experiencing a deep sense of alienation that fuels his introspective nature. He grapples with complex theological arguments, yet his innate artistic sensibility draws him towards a different form of truth, one found in beauty and aesthetic contemplation. This burgeoning aestheticism, influenced by his own keen observations and a developing understanding of art theory, becomes a counterpoint to the spiritual dogma he is being taught. He begins to see the world not just through the lens of sin and redemption but through a prism of form, color, and emotional resonance. This internal schism between the prescribed path of religious devotion and the siren call of artistic creation becomes the central tension driving his personal and intellectual development, pushing him further down the path of self-discovery and artistic self-definition, often in direct opposition to the prevailing religious and social norms. Stephen's trajectory is fundamentally defined by an intense and often agonizing struggle against the perceived constraints of his Irish milieu, a society deeply shaped and arguably stifled by the rigid dictates of Catholicism and the fervent tides of nationalism. These external forces exert a profound pressure on his developing psyche, contributing to a pervasive sense of guilt, a gnawing alienation, and a persistent, internally generated conflict that fuels his artistic aspirations. The novel opens with fragments of childhood memory, rendered with an almost hallucinatory vividness, yet marked by a profound fragmentation that itself mirrors Stephen's nascent artistic perspective. His ability to perceive the world through a uniquely subjective and impressionistic lens. As he matures, his intellectual development is significantly shaped by his engagement with the philosophical systems of thinkers like Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. These rigorous intellectual frameworks, while initially offering a potential grounding for his burgeoning ideas, also become a battleground for his own evolving thoughts. As he attempts to reconcile the established doctrines with his own intuitive grasp of beauty and truth, his exploration of these complex philosophical structures is not merely an academic exercise. It is an essential part of his quest to establish a personal epistemology, a philosophical foundation upon which he can build his own artistic creed and justify his eventual separation from the societal norms that increasingly feel like intellectual and spiritual fetters. Stephen's quest for artistic truth leads him to a profound engagement with aesthetic theory, a development that marks a significant turning point in his intellectual and personal journey. He delves into the writings of philosophers and theologians, seeking to articulate a coherent philosophy of art that can reconcile his burgeoning creative impulses with his intellectual curiosity. Influenced by thinkers such as Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, he begins to formulate his own theories on beauty, form, and the nature of artistic creation. This engagement is not purely academic, it is deeply personal, a means of justifying and validating his own artistic calling in a society that often views art with suspicion or as a frivolous pursuit. He contemplates the nature of the artistic experience, particularly the concept of the Epiphany, a sudden, profound revelation of beauty or truth that strikes the sensitive observer. These epiphanies become moments of intense clarity, moments when the veil of ordinary perception is lifted, revealing the underlying essence of things. He theorizes that true art should elicit a state of aesthetic arrest, a contemplative stillness that allows the audience to appreciate form and beauty without the distraction of personal desire or aversion. This distinction between proper and improper art underscores his commitment to an art that elevates and provides aesthetic insight, rather than one that merely excites immediate emotional reactions of kinetic desire or loathing. Stephen's evolving aesthetic philosophy is deeply influenced by his intellectual engagement with classical and scholastic thought, particularly the ideas of Thomas Aquinas, while also acknowledging the need for new frameworks to articulate his own artistic experiences. He begins to categorize the forms of artistic expression, proposing a progression from the lyrical, which captures fleeting emotions, through the epic, which narrates grand events, to the dramatic, which embodies human action and conflict. This theoretical scaffolding allows him to analyze and understand his own developing artistic impulses. Central to the unfolding narrative of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is Stephen's relentless pursuit of artistic and, by extension, personal freedom. This yearning is not merely a desire for liberation from external pressures. It is a profound imperative to escape the intellectual and spiritual confines of his upbringing, to carve out an independent artistic path. And to find a voice that is authentically his own, a voice that often necessitates a physical and symbolic departure, frequently manifesting as a desire to travel abroad. His intellectual journey culminates in the formulation of a distinctive aesthetic theory. This theory, developed through a meticulous process of internal reflection, rigorous reading, and critical synthesis, moves beyond mere personal preference to establish a systematic categorization of art. He delineates artistic expression into lyrical, epical, and dramatic forms. A classification that not only reflects his evolving understanding of the diverse modalities of artistic creation but also serves as a clear manifesto of James Joyce's own deeply held conception of art's purpose and power. This theoretical framework is not an abstract intellectual exercise, it is the very architecture of his artistic identity. The intellectual scaffolding that supports his ambition to transcend the limitations of his environment and contribute to the global artistic conversation. The formulation of this theory marks a pivotal moment in his development, signifying his transition from a receptive student of the world to an active interpreter and creator within it. The growing chasm between Stephen's artistic aspirations and the constraints of his Irish environment culminates in his deliberate embrace of exile. A pivotal decision that signifies his conscious severance from the familiar and his commitment to forging an independent artistic identity. This yearning for liberation from the perceived spiritual and intellectual stagnation of Dublin becomes an overwhelming force, propelling him towards a life of self-imposed wandering. He views his homeland not as a source of inspiration but as a stifling entity, a place of paralysis that hinders his growth as an artist. The pervasive influence of the Catholic Church, the weight of familial obligations, and the narrow-mindedness of societal expectations all contribute to his profound sense of alienation and his desperate need to escape. Europe, therefore, represents not just a geographical destination but a symbolic sanctuary. A space where he believes he can finally breathe freely and dedicate himself entirely to his art. His departure is a bold declaration of independence, a refusal to be defined by the traditions and limitations that have shaped his early life. This act of self-exile is not born of bitterness alone, but from a profound conviction that his artistic destiny lies beyond the shores of Ireland. He envisions a life dedicated to the pursuit of beauty and truth, a life lived in accordance with his own evolving aesthetic principles, even if it means enduring the solitude and uncertainty that such a path inevitably entails. This deliberate choice to become an outsider, a wanderer, is the necessary crucible in which his artistic self will be fully forged. The concept of exile, both physical and spiritual, is not merely a thematic element in Stephen Dedalus's journey. It is an essential catalyst for his artistic and personal liberation. Stephen experiences a profound spiritual exile from the rigid doctrines and societal expectations of his Irish Catholic upbringing. This internal severance from the prevailing religious and moral framework allows him to question authority and to seek out alternative modes of thought and being. Concurrently, his intellectual and artistic aspirations increasingly alienate him from his homeland, foreshadowing his eventual physical departure from Ireland. This growing sense of detachment, this feeling of not belonging, is what Joyce famously encapsulates in Stephen's desired creed. Silence, exile, and cunning. These elements are not presented as negative consequences but as necessary tools for the artist to achieve true independence and to cultivate his unique voice. By embracing exile, Stephen frees himself from the constraints of his environment, enabling him to develop his individualism and to pursue his artistic calling with unwavering dedication. His journey signifies a deliberate turning away from the familiar, a necessary step towards the creation of a self and an art that are entirely his own. The concept of non-serviam, meaning I will not serve, emerges as a pivotal declaration in Stephen Dedalus's journey toward artistic self-realization. This defiant motto, echoing the spirit of Lucifer's rebellion against divine authority, encapsulates Stephen's profound rejection of all forms of subservience, particularly to the institutions and ideologies that seek to dictate his thoughts, beliefs, and creative output. It is not merely a statement of defiance but a foundational principle upon which he intends to build his artistic identity and his life. The strictures of the Catholic Church, with its emphasis on obedience and its condemnation of intellectual curiosity that deviates from dogma, represent the primary target of this renunciation. However, Stephen's non-serviam extends beyond religious authority to encompass the stifling embrace of Irish nationalism, the expectations of his family, and the conventional social norms of his time. He views these as chains that would inevitably bind his creative spirit, preventing him from achieving the unadulterated aesthetic vision he craves. This declaration marks a crucial turning point, transforming his internal struggles into a conscious, active pursuit of independence. It signifies his commitment to forge his own path, to serve only his artistic conscience, and to find his own truth, even if it means embracing a life of solitude and ostracism. His quest for artistic integrity becomes synonymous with a radical personal liberation, a refusal to be molded by external forces. Following his pronouncement of non-serviam, Stephen Dedalus articulates his nascent artistic philosophy through the strategic embrace of silence, exile, and cunning. These three tenets form the practical framework for his determined pursuit of artistic independence. A pragmatic approach to navigating a world he perceives as actively hostile to genuine artistic creation. Silence represents a withdrawal from the cacophony of superficial discourse, from the endless debates and pronouncements that dilute authentic artistic expression. It is a deliberate act of self-containment, allowing him to cultivate his inner vision without undue external influence. Exile, as previously established, is not merely a physical departure from Ireland but a profound severance from the ideological and emotional ties that could compromise his artistic integrity. It is a chosen state of detachment, enabling him to observe the world from a removed perspective, unburdened by sentimental allegiances or ingrained prejudices. Cunning denotes the intellectual shrewdness and strategic maneuvering required to survive and thrive in this self-imposed isolation. It is the art of discerning truth from falsehood, of navigating the complexities of patronage, criticism, and societal expectations with a sharp, analytical mind, all while maintaining the purity of his artistic purpose. Together, these principles constitute a sophisticated survival manual for the solitary artist. A strategy for preserving and developing his unique voice in a world that often demands conformity. Moments of epiphany serve as crucial turning points in Stephen Dedalus's intellectual and artistic development, illuminating his path towards self-discovery and the realization of his artistic calling. These are not mere coincidences but profound instances of sudden, often overwhelming, spiritual or intellectual revelation that fundamentally alter his perception of himself and the world around him. In A Portrait, these epiphanies are depicted as flashes of insight, triggered by seemingly ordinary encounters or observations, which reveal a deeper, underlying truth or beauty. For Stephen, these moments are invaluable guides, coalescing disparate thoughts and feelings into a coherent understanding of his purpose. They are the catalyst for his rejection of societal norms and his growing conviction in the necessity of his artistic mission. For instance, an epiphany might strike him while observing a natural phenomenon, experiencing a piece of art, or engaging in a philosophical debate, leading to a sudden clarity about the nature of beauty, truth, or his own artistic identity. These sudden illuminations are integral to Joyce's narrative technique, allowing the reader to witness the internal evolution of Stephen's mind in a compressed, impactful manner. They underscore the novel's exploration of how profound understanding can arise from unexpected sources, shaping Stephen's aesthetic theories and reinforcing his commitment to a life dedicated to the pursuit of art. The scene in which Stephen Dedalus composes a villanelle is far more than a mere literary exercise. It stands as a powerful demonstration of his evolving aesthetic theories and his developing mastery of form, serving as an artistic manifesto in practice. A villanelle, with its intricate 19-line structure, its 2 repeating rhymes, and its 2 refrains that appear alternately throughout the poem, demands not only technical skill but also a deep understanding of how form can shape and convey meaning. Stephen's engagement with this highly structured poetic form reflects his growing appreciation for the discipline inherent in great art. He is not a bohemian artist lost in unfettered emotion, but one who understands that true artistic liberation often arises from the skillful manipulation of constraint. The process of composing the villanelle allows him to explore themes of longing, beauty, and artistic yearning, translating his internal struggles into a carefully crafted external form. Each carefully chosen word, each precisely placed refrain, becomes a testament to his growing confidence and his ability to impose order and coherence upon complex subjective experience. This scene solidifies his embrace of aesthetic principles, demonstrating that his rebellion is not against form itself, but against the superficial and uninspired application of it. The villanelle becomes a tangible manifestation of his artistic maturity, a testament to his dedication to the craft and his capacity to create enduring beauty. Joyce masterfully employs a diverse array of literary techniques to meticulously portray Stephen's arduous artistic evolution, with the stream of consciousness narration emerging as the most salient and groundbreaking of these devices. This narrative approach allows readers an unparalleled, unmediated glimpse into the intricate, often chaotic, and profoundly subjective workings of Stephen's mind. From the hazy impressions of his earliest childhood to the more defined intellectual preoccupations of early manhood, the reader is invited to witness the raw, unfiltered flow of thoughts, sensations, and associations that constitute his inner life. This technique is not merely a stylistic flourish, it is integral to the novel's thematic concerns, mirroring the nonlinear, fractured, and often revisionary nature of consciousness itself, and, by extension, the often turbulent creative process. The very structure of the novel, characterized by its shifts in focus, its recurring motifs, and its occasional abrupt transitions, reflects this commitment to representing the complex topography of the human mind. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is thus universally recognized not merely as a significant work but as a paradigmatic modernist novel. It represents a decisive break from the more conventional narrative forms and thematic preoccupations of earlier literary eras. Its profound commitment to an aesthetic vision that places paramount importance on individual subjective experience and the exploration of inner reality, often at the expense of adherence to external social norms and conventions, firmly established it as a foundational text of literary modernism. Its modernity lies not just in its formal innovations but in its radical insistence on the primacy of individual values and virtues in the face of societal dictates. Its unwavering focus on the intricate landscape of the inner self, the novel's enduring quality and its timeless resonance, paradoxically juxtaposed with its profound engagement with the specific cultural and intellectual currents of its time, solidify its status as a central and indispensable text of early 20th century literary modernism. The narrative technique employed in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is as revolutionary as the themes it explores, marking a significant departure from traditional literary conventions and laying crucial groundwork for the modernist movement. Joyce masterfully utilizes early forms of stream of consciousness, a style that aims to capture the continuous flow of a character's thoughts and feelings, presenting the whirling, chaotic, and constantly changing flow of consciousness. This technique allows readers to access Stephen's internal world with unprecedented intimacy, experiencing the fragmented nature of thought, the associative leaps, and the emphasis on subjective reality over objective fact. While the narration is often in the third person, it fluidly merges with Stephen's own thoughts, creating an immersive interior monologue that draws the reader directly into his mind. This departure from a distinct, commenting omniscient narrator complicates interpretations of irony, leaving questions about Joyce's subtle commentary on Stephen's development wide open, potentially having the effect of deconstructing common notions of maturity. This stylistic innovation, while potentially making for difficult reading, was a radical step in rendering the complexities of the human psyche. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is fundamentally a Künstlerroman, a novel dedicated to charting the spiritual and artistic development of its protagonist. However, it also functions as a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story that meticulously chronicles Stephen Dedalus's journey from childhood innocence to the cusp of artistic maturity, encompassing his psychological and intellectual growth. Joyce's approach to narrative structure deliberately deviates from the chronologically ordered plots that were characteristic of 19th century novels. Instead, he employs the stream of consciousness technique to selectively highlight crucial moments in the life of Dedalus, allowing the reader to piece together his evolution through these significant episodes. This nonlinear approach mirrors the actual way individuals experience and recall their lives, emphasizing subjective memory and the emotional resonance of events over strict temporal sequencing. The novel is deeply autobiographical, projecting Joyce's essentially artistic self onto the fictional character Stephen Dedalus, drawing from his own experiences in Ireland. This profound interplay between autobiography and artistic invention allows Joyce to explore universal themes of identity, Vocation, and the search for artistic freedom through the specific, deeply personal lens of Stephen's life. The narrative arc of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is intrinsically interwoven with Stephen Dedalus's burgeoning artistic calling, chronicling his evolution into a distinct archetype of the rebel. One whose emerging sensibility and sharpened perception irrevocably set him apart from the prevailing intellectual and cultural trends endemic to Ireland. His quest for a coherent sense of self is not merely a passive unfolding of events but an active, often defiant drive to transcend the immediate, often stifling, circumstances of his birth and upbringing. This proactive stance involves forging a distinct personal path, one illuminated and guided by the singular light of art. The entire narrative tapestry is woven around the pivotal moments and evolving stages of Stephen's life, meticulously charting his journey from the innocence of childhood, through the tumultuous period of adolescence, to the profound and often daunting realization of his artistic destiny. This realization is not a singular event but a continuous process of becoming, a testament to the enduring power of vocation. Joyce's portrayal of Stephen is by no means confined to the pages of A Portrait. The character, a complex and dynamic entity, continues his existential and intellectual peregrinations in subsequent seminal works. Most notably in Ulysses, where Stephen Dedalus stands as a central protagonist, further solidifying his role as a vital conduit for Joyce's own evolving fictional persona. The intricate and deeply symbiotic relationship between James Joyce the author and Stephen Dedalus the character remains a subject of considerable critical fascination, with Stephen frequently interpreted as the voice, the consciousness, and the experiential vehicle through which Joyce speaks, reflects, and interrogates the world. This sustained engagement with the character across multiple narratives underscores the profound significance of Stephen's development not just as a fictional creation but as a sustained exploration of the artist's existential predicament. Joyce's masterful manipulation of language is a cornerstone of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, serving as both a medium for Stephen's evolving consciousness and a subject of his artistic exploration. The novel is a testament to the power of words, demonstrating their capacity to shape thought, construct identity, and forge connections between the inner world of the individual and the external realities of existence. Joyce meticulously crafts the narrative voice, allowing it to mature and adapt alongside Stephen's own linguistic development. This is evident in the progressive complexity of the prose, which mirrors the child's gradual mastery of language, moving from simple, sensory perceptions in infancy to sophisticated internal monologues and abstract reasoning in adulthood. The novel delves into the very essence of language, its inherent ambiguities, its potential for both profound expression and subtle deception, and its crucial role in the construction of selfhood. Stephen's internal dialogues are a vibrant display of linguistic experimentation, showcasing his growing command over words and his ability to use them as tools for introspection and self-definition. He grapples with the nuances of meaning, the power of rhetoric, and the beauty of linguistic form. This deep engagement with language is not merely stylistic, it is integral to Stephen's journey of self-discovery. As he learns to harness the power of words to articulate his unique perspective, to articulate his rebellion, and ultimately, to build the edifice of his artistic identity. The early reception of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, upon its publication was marked by controversy and misunderstanding, a stark contrast to its enduring literary significance today. Contemporary critics, often uncomfortable with Joyce's unflinching portrayal of the human psyche and his experimental narrative techniques, reacted with harshness. Comments such as cloacal obsession and the slime of foul sewers reflected a societal unease with the novel's frank exploration of sexuality, religion, and the complexities of internal life. These reactions, however, are now viewed through the lens of a changing literary landscape and evolving sensibilities. The novel's radical experiments with interior monologue and its precursor status to the more complex techniques in Ulysses are now recognized as pivotal shifts in Western literary history, marking a transition from realism to modernism. The book is understood as a crucial transition of Western literary techniques, literary concepts and philosophical thoughts from realism to modernism, profoundly influencing subsequent generations of writers and critics. Its exploration of individualism, its daring stylistic choices, and its deep dive into the formation of an artist's soul have cemented its place as a cornerstone of modernist literature. The critical reception of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man has been a dynamic and evolving phenomenon, reflecting the novel's groundbreaking nature and its enduring influence on literary discourse. Upon its publication, the work was met with a mixture of admiration and controversy. A testament to its radical departure from conventional literary norms. Early critics, grappling with Joyce's innovative use of stream of consciousness and his unflinching portrayal of Stephen's internal struggles, recognized its significance as a seminal work of modernist literature. However, some found its introspective depth and philosophical complexity challenging, leading to divided opinions regarding its artistic merit and thematic coherence. Over the decades, scholarly interpretations have broadened and deepened, employing diverse critical lenses to dissect the novel's intricate layers. Psychoanalytic readings have explored Stephen's Oedipal complexities and his subconscious desires, while feminist critiques have examined the novel's portrayal of gender roles and its depiction of female characters within a patriarchal society. Post-colonial perspectives have illuminated the novel's engagement with Irish identity, national consciousness, and the legacy of colonial rule, analyzing Stephen's Alienation as a product of this historical context. Despite varying viewpoints, a consensus has emerged regarding the novel's status as a foundational text of modernism. Its bold experimentation with form and narrative technique having irrevocably altered the landscape of 20th-century fiction and continuing to inspire and provoke debate among readers and scholars alike. The literary trajectory from Stephen Dedalus's formative years in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man to his more complex, fragmented persona in Ulysses represents a significant evolution in both character and narrative ambition. Portrait lays the essential groundwork, meticulously detailing the intellectual and spiritual maturation of Stephen, establishing his alienation, his artistic theories, and his defiant spirit through the lens of a more conventional, albeit highly experimental, coming-of-age narrative. The techniques and themes introduced in Portrait, the stream of consciousness, the exploration of subjective experience, the artist's struggle against societal constraints, and the profound engagement with language are not merely revisited in Ulysses, but are amplified and taken to new, audacious levels. Stephen in Ulysses is a more developed, more world-weary artist. His ideals tested by the harsh realities of his exile and his ongoing search for meaning. The foundational quest for selfhood chronicled in Portrait continues in Ulysses, but it is now interwoven with the intricate, multi-layered narrative of Leopold Bloom's day in Dublin. The youthful fervor and nascent aestheticism of Stephen Dedalus are still present, but they are now tempered by a greater understanding of human frailty and the complexities of existence. Joyce's journey from Portrait to Ulysses thus demonstrates a deepening mastery of his craft, transforming the intensely personal exploration of artistic birth into an expansive, panoramic vision of human consciousness and experience. With Stephen Dedalus serving as a crucial, evolving link between these two monumental works. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man stands as a profound manifesto of modernist aesthetics, transcending its narrative of individual development to articulate a radical new vision for the art of the novel. Joyce, through Stephen Dedalus's intellectual and artistic awakening, propounds a philosophy that challenges the conventions of earlier literary traditions, advocating for a form of art that is introspective, experimental, and deeply engaged with the subjective experience of consciousness. The novel's embrace of stream of consciousness, its fluid and often unconventional syntax, and its symbolic richness all signal a decisive break from realism and a move towards a more interior and psychological mode of storytelling. Stephen's development of an aesthetic theory, emphasizing beauty and the revelatory power of the Epiphany, serves as a theoretical justification for this modernist project, positioning art as a means of apprehending truth and forging meaning in a fragmented world. The novel's exploration of alienation and exile, far from being mere plot devices, becomes emblematic of the modernist artist's position in society and outsider, compelled to challenge established norms and forge new paths of understanding. Thus, Portrait is not simply a coming-of-age story, it is a declaration of artistic independence. A blueprint for a new kind of literature that prioritizes innovation, individual perception, and the profound complexities of the human mind, irrevocably shaping the course of 20th-century literary modernism and beyond. While A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is widely lauded for its groundbreaking modernist techniques and profound exploration of artistic identity, it has also been subjected to critical examination, revealing inherent limitations and diverse interpretations that contribute to a more nuanced understanding of Stephen Dedalus's journey and Joyce's Artistic vision. Some critics have pointed to Stephen's perceived immaturity and self-absorption, suggesting that his intense introspection and fervent pronouncements on art, while central to his development, can sometimes verge on an adolescent arrogance, a detachment from the lived realities of those around him. This perspective often questions whether Stephen's alienation is entirely a noble sacrifice for art, or if it stems, in part, from a difficult and perhaps even solipsistic personality. Furthermore, his often harsh pronouncements, particularly concerning women and societal norms, have drawn considerable scrutiny. His misogynistic undertones, though perhaps representative of a certain intellectual milieu or a psychological defense mechanism, have been flagged as a problematic aspect of his character, prompting discussions about the novel's depiction of gender and its potential to perpetuate certain patriarchal attitudes, even within a narrative ostensibly championing liberation. The very notion of the classless artist, a concept Stephen grapples with and seems to aspire to, has also been debated. Is it truly attainable, or is it a romanticized ideal that overlooks the socio-economic realities and privileges that often underpin artistic creation? Critics have questioned whether Stephen's privileged boarding school upbringing and his subsequent intellectual pursuits, while challenging conventional societal structures, still operate within a framework that implicitly benefits from certain class advantages. A point often overlooked in sweeping declarations of artistic freedom. Moreover, the narrative's intense focus on Stephen's internal landscape, while a triumph of stream-of-consciousness technique, can also be perceived by some as a limitation. The external world, the complexities of Irish politics, and the broader social tapestry often recede into the background, serving primarily as a foil to Stephen's internal struggles. This can lead to a reading where the novel, while deeply psychological, might be seen as less engaged with the tangible, collective experiences of its time, focusing instead on the singular, albeit brilliant, trajectory of its protagonist. The novel's dense intellectualism and sophisticated literary allusions, while enriching for many, have also been noted as potential barriers for some readers, leading to a perception that the work, in its very construction, can foster a sense of intellectual elitism, mirroring Stephen's own isolation from the common populace. These criticisms are not intended to diminish the novel's immense achievements, but rather to illuminate the multifaceted nature of its reception and the ongoing scholarly dialogue that acknowledges both its pioneering brilliance and the points where its vision might be seen as limited or open to challenge. The enduring legacy of James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man extends far beyond its immediate impact on modernist literature, continuing to shape critical discourse and inspire new avenues of scholarly inquiry. As a foundational text, it established a paradigm for the Künstlerroman, influencing countless subsequent novels that explore the development of an artist's identity and creative consciousness. Its pioneering use of stream of consciousness, though now a more recognized literary tool, was revolutionary, fundamentally altering the possibilities of narrative perspective and interiority in fiction. This technique, in its meticulous mapping of Stephen Dedalus's evolving thoughts and sensations, opened doors for writers to delve into the subjective experience of characters with unprecedented depth, paving the way for much of the psychological realism and experimental narrative structures that characterize 20th-century literature and continue to be explored today. The novel's complex engagement with themes of exile, alienation, and the search for self-definition remains remarkably relevant. In an increasingly globalized yet often fragmented world, Stephen's struggle to forge an identity distinct from his inherited cultural, religious, and nationalistic ties resonates deeply with contemporary concerns about belonging and authenticity. His decision to embrace exile, not as a failure but as a necessary condition for artistic freedom, continues to be a compelling and often debated aspect of his character, prompting ongoing discussions about the relationship between artistic integrity and societal engagement. Modern scholarship often revisits A Portrait through lenses informed by contemporary critical theories, examining its exploration of Irish Catholic identity, the complex interplay of patriarchal structures and nascent female subjectivity, even in Stephen's limited portrayals, and the very construction of artistic genius. Recent trends in literary studies have also focused on the novel as a crucial precursor to Joyce's later masterpiece, Ulysses, tracing the germinal ideas, linguistic experiments, and thematic preoccupations that would blossom in his epic Dublin novel. Analyzing the evolutionary process from Stephen Dedalus's internal world and portrait to Leopold Bloom's expansive consciousness in Ulysses offers A rich field for understanding Joyce's artistic trajectory and the development of his groundbreaking narrative techniques. Further research could delve into comparative studies of Künstlerroman across different cultural contexts.